Illinois, Oregon, and California have all moved to block Donald Trump's attempts to deploy National Guard troops into their states, arguing that the actions represent an unconstitutional power grab and an abuse of federal authority. In each case, state officials say Trump's interventions have nothing to do with public safety and everything to do with punishing political opponents with authoritarian action. In Illinois, Attorney General Kwame Rowell filed a sweeping lawsuit seeking to prevent the regime from federalizing the state's National Guard or sending in troops from other states without consent. Acting on behalf of both the state and the city of Chicago, Rowell accused the president of using military power to intimidate local leaders and silence dissent. The American people, regardless of where they reside, should not live under the threat of occupation by the United States military, he wrote in the filing, warning that the president was deploying troops not for national defense, but for political theater. Governor J.B. Pritzker echoed those concerns, describing the move as a form of internal occupation. "We must now start calling this what it is, Trump's invasion," he said, citing reports that troops from Texas were being readied to enter Illinois. "He's sending military personnel into our communities against our wishes and without any legal justification." Pritzker said the regime had given no notice or explanation to state officials before announcing the plan. Rowell argued that the deployment would inflame tensions in Chicago rather than calm them, especially after weeks of protests and heightened immigration enforcement operations. The lawsuit claimed the move would harm the social fabric and community relations and depress business and tourism across the state. Local officials noted that any such deployment would violate state sovereignty and could expose residents to unnecessary conflict. Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson also took independent action to resist federal intervention. In an executive order, he banned federal immigration agents from using city-owned property to stage operations after reports that ICE had used public school parking lots and city facilities. "We will not tolerate ICE agents violating our residents' constitutional rights," Johnson said, accusing federal officers of tear-gassing protesters, detaining elected officials, and disregarding local authority. "We will not stand for that in our city." While Illinois was mounting its legal challenge, Oregon became the first state to secure a courtroom victory against Trump's troop orders. U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut, who was herself appointed by Trump, issued a temporary restraining order blocking the regime from sending National Guard troops to Portland. Her decision came just hours after Trump announced plans to federalize units from California and redeploy them to Oregon to assist immigration authorities. The judge ruled there was no evidence to justify the presence of federalized troops in Portland, asking administration lawyers how deploying California's National Guard could possibly comply with her earlier decision barring such action. The order, which remains in effect until at least October 19, halted the regime's plans, while Oregon and California pursue a longer-term injunction. The ruling prompted outrage from Trump officials who claimed the court had overstepped its authority. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt dismissed the decision as untethered from reality, arguing the judge had ignored what she described as a genuine threat to law enforcement in Portland.
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? They should be concerned about this. They should be concerned about the fact that people in their cities right now are being gunned down every single night. And the president, all he's trying to do is fix it. And there has been a complete smear campaign by the Democrats and the media, quite frankly. I was reading Political Playbook this morning, one of the most inside the Beltway newsletters you can find. And you guys are framing this like the president wants to take over the American cities with the military. The president wants to help these local leaders who have been completely ineffective in securing their own cities.
She claimed that the local immigration and customs enforcement facility had been under siege by anarchists and accused protesters of disrespecting law enforcement and inciting violence. Leavitt said the regime planned to appeal immediately, adding, "We are very confident in the president's legal authority to do this." Leavitt also lashed out at Democratic governors and mayors, including J.B. Pritzker in Illinois and Gavin Newsom in California, accusing them of obstructing federal law enforcement for political gain. These leaders, she said, are putting ideology above safety, insisting that Trump's deployments were necessary to protect federal assets and personnel. Her comments underscored the widening divide between the regime and state governments as blue states move swiftly to assert their independence from federal control. Despite the administration's defense, the judge's ruling was widely seen as a rare instance of judicial restraint from a Trump-appointed judge. Portland's senior deputy attorney, Caroline Turco, testified that protests in the city had been peaceful for months, often drawing fewer than a dozen participants. She said the claim that Portland had become a war zone was political fiction. California Governor Gavin Newsom, whose state's troops had been ordered to deploy to Oregon, quickly joined the fight. He condemned the regime's move as an attack on the rule of law itself and announced his intention to sue. "This isn't about public safety. It's about power," Newsom said. "We will take this fight to court, but the public cannot stay silent in the face of such reckless and authoritarian conduct." Soon after, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield said his office was preparing to take legal action as well. The president is hell-bent on deploying the military in American cities, absent facts or authority to do so, Rayfield wrote on social media. "It's up to us and the courts to hold him accountable." Both states filed for a temporary restraining order after Trump began moving troops from California to Oregon. The Pentagon confirmed the plan, stating that around 200 federalized members of the California National Guard were being reassigned to Portland to support U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other federal personnel performing official duties. The White House defended the president's decision as a lawful use of executive power. For years, Trump has described cities like Chicago and Portland as lawless and dangerous, claiming they require a federal crackdown to restore order. Yet state and local officials say the violence has been exaggerated for political purposes and that federal intervention only fuels unrest. The latest round of lawsuits marks the second time in recent years that the federal courts have had to step in to limit the use of troops in domestic matters. The victories in Oregon and Illinois have emboldened other states to assert their authority. Together, they form an emerging precedent that the president cannot deploy a state's National Guard without its consent. In each case, the courts have sided with the states, emphasizing that domestic troop deployments are a last resort and that local governance must be respected. As the legal battles continue, leaders in Illinois, Oregon, and California have framed the issue as a defense not only of state sovereignty, but of domestic norms themselves. "It's appalling, it's un-American, and it must be stopped," Gavin Newsom said. "The American people deserve a government that protects their rights, not one that sends troops into their streets." I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.